So there are a lot of different types of videos that you could do for this. And I touched on some of those, like the weird beaver puppet video from Oregon State. There's some that's just animated text going by, and there's plenty that have the actual, or someone high up in the institution of higher learning who's really going through messages or steps or something like that, maybe just offering words of encouragement. That's kind of what I'm going for right now. So there's different ways you can do that too. For starters, never underestimate the power of the mobile camera. They have become very good with cell phones and tablets and things like that. So you could record an at-home message. You could even do it with the chancellor, president, or whomever themselves doing it, which would be really nice. Of course, you're going to run into issues, but I feel like whenever you're doing it obviously at home, obviously handheld sort of video, the expectations for production values are going to be a lot lower, and students are used to those sorts of things, so it's not really going to be an issue. So really we're touching on a pretty simple video process that can really make a huge impact on people and isn't really that difficult to do. Now, granted, you're going to need equipment. Maybe not all schools have that. But again, if you kind of hit a snag, try using a mobile device. The audio might not be as good, but at least you have something. So the first aspect I want to talk about in making this message video that I'm sort of making for you right now is shot composition. So you're going to want to light your subject from the front. Your subject is the person who's speaking. It's the person who is in the video. And you generally want to, you don't want to show their whole body or show just their face or something weird like that. You kind of want to show like a bust of them, so to speak. And it's give them a little space on top of their head too. You want to make sure you have an environment or a background that's conducive to the audio and the visual. So audio being, you don't want too many extraneous sounds. So going outside may not be the best idea. You have birds chirping or whatever. Inside's usually much better. There might be some ambient noise, but usually it's not as distracting. And that's one of the big things you want to eliminate are distractions. You don't want things coming out of your subject's head. You don't want crazy paintings or lava lamps or something in the background, unless maybe that is really part of their personality. That's kind of a judgment call, but generally speaking, you avoid those things. So my little area here, I don't have a home studio, so my area here is about the best I can do. It's not great, so that's the reason it's dark. I darkened out the background and kind of the surrounding area as much as I could so that you can't see too much and get distracted by what's in there. And then I have a light in front so that you can see my face, my eyes. Those are the most important things. Again, we're trying to convey authenticity and sincerity. You want them to be able to see the eyes, the windows to the soul, and get a good look at the speaker's face. I wouldn't shroud them in shadows like they're Batman or something like that. So you have your shot composition, just something simple like this. And one other quick tip, because again, with most of these messages, if it's a crisis, it's going to be a somber message. It's going to be something serious, and it's not something you ever really want to announce, but you have to at this point. So to combat nervousness, perhaps, some people are great on camera, some people aren't so great. But there's things you can do for anyone. So a lot of people like to move or sway or shift their weight when they're just standing and delivering a message. So have them sit down. I prefer to do a low back seat, so a bench or a stool, or this is actually a folding chair I'm in, but the back is really low, so I pretty much cover it, and you can't really see it. You don't really want to see that throne peeking out the side of their shoulder or anything like that, or the office chair, things like that. Office chairs also move, so you probably want to avoid that anyway. But make sure your subject is comfortable because they're going to deliver a difficult message. So let's talk about that message. We've already kind of said what you should say, what you shouldn't say, generally speaking, words to use, words not to use. But you're probably going to write a script. If you have a higher up who's going to be recording a message, they'll probably insist on a script anyway. So what do? Well, you write them the script, right? Okay. How do you get them to read the script into the camera without it looking bad? Because if you have a piece of paper and you're standing off to the side, they're going to be delivering the message to people like this. You have to speak into the camera. You have to. Obviously, a teleprompter works great, but a lot of schools aren't going to have access to teleprompters. It's not that easy. And if it's talking crisis communications, you probably have less access to things that you might have access to otherwise. Even if it's borrowing equipment or going in to use certain things, you just might not be able to do that. You might be a very rough and ready sort of video production unit or person. So there are a couple cheats. One is to move the camera a ways back. It depends on the camera. If you can get a good enough zoom that you can move the camera far back and your speaker can read, you could just print the script out on pieces of paper in very large font and they can read them from far away. If they're looking mostly at the camera but maybe just below it, you might not really be able to tell that they're reading from a script. They could be looking at the camera as far as you know. And my camera is not very far back. I don't have a very deep zoom with this lens. So, or right above, maybe you have the scripts right above the camera lens and they're reading it like this. That's probably a lot better. You definitely don't want them looking off to the side and reading a script. Another thing may be to kind of let them wing it. Some people can really go. They can really speak well. And if you just let them say their piece and deliver their message, it might be the best thing. And you can edit. Nonlinear editing, not super difficult. There's plenty of programs. There's Avid, there's Adobe Premiere Pro. There's Sony Vegas. That's kind of an old one. And some people use iMovie. I don't think it's very good. But there are options out there. And actually, if you're just shaving things off or removing little pieces out, you can even do that on YouTube in some instances. Because for a message like this, you probably don't want to do those YouTube hard cuts, from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Very common on YouTube and in social media, but this is your president or this is your chancellor. This is someone who's very important and in a position of prestige. You need to present them in a very sophisticated, very seamless form. I wouldn't go with just a bunch of hard cuts because that's really more used often for comedy, quite frankly. And we're as far away from comedy as we can be. We're dead serious with our crisis messaging, right? So don't be afraid to put in other images right on top of those things. So if a sequence fits with what the president or chancellor or whomever is talking about, do that. Add a little video sequence if you have one. If you already have some old videos that have these sequences, just take that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and find some totally new thing to blow people's minds. You're pretty much just using it to hide these cuts anyway, right? Or if certain things are mentioned that really need to be shown, show them there too. But one of the main things is if you have to make cuts, you need to hide the cuts to make it look professional. And if you need to show something or you think it will really jazz it up, really improve your video, show the image, show the clip, whatever it may be, the graphic, and improve that. Like to hide some of my cuts, I'm probably going to put some B-roll of me setting up a camera or setting up lights or showing off a cell phone camera and how it can be used. Things like that because I'm going to have a lot of cuts. But also, I'm not as worried about delivering a very serious message, so I can do lots of hard cuts. One final thing to avoid, because I do see this from time to time, transitions are great. A fade to black, a dip to white, a crossfade, those are great in certain instances. It looks really bad when the same speaker crossfades to the same speaker. So you have your president talking and then to hide a cut, you crossfade to him speaking another line. Don't do it. It looks ridiculous. Going back to graphics, I'm not really a graphic designer, and you should definitely be using some type of graphics to make it seem as an official message as possible, because this is as official as a message gets. This could end up on the news or something. You're probably going to want some sort of identifying graphic so that people can know it's the school and identify with it a little bit better. You want them to identify with the school, the graphics will help that, and they're going to identify with the speaker, and that's a part of the school. So to get that message across, you need that person of prestige speaking clearly and professionally, and you need to be able to make it a package that the student sees it as a message from the school too. So they look at the school in a positive light. If you have special graphics for that particular crisis, not necessarily important. It would be nice for a recovery. If you have like an earthquake recovery graphic would be nice to do. But in the earlier stages when you're just trying to get information out there, that's not important. And I would never hold up a message or any kind of video message because a graphic's not done yet. move on. You know, I showed the example of the WashU thing and they didn't have really any graphic at all. The lower third identifier was just the name and the title. If you don't have anything, just do, this is kind of an industry term, but do a color match. Just do something simple if you have to. Just put something out there. The important thing is timeliness, how much information you're actually putting out there, and then what I'm talking about now, what I'm really covering for, you know, someone who's maybe not as familiar with the video side of things, is how to make a professional video fairly easily. If you're coaching your subject matter expert, your subject, it's okay if they feel more comfortable using their hands when they talk, let them do it. If they want to do a Donald Trump sort of a thing, that's not that big of a deal. It may look kind of silly, but it won't be that bad. Now, ideally, they'll sit calmly, perhaps with their hands in their laps or something like that, and give it a calmer message. That's ideal, but you kind of have to make do with the person that you have sometimes. And happy video making.